Hi, good evening. Today's Friday, July 9th. We had quite a few exciting days in the market in the last 2 days, quite a roller coaster. Wednesday, we have made new highs in the market yet again, which made it 9 all-time highs in a row, basically tying the record with 1929 for 9 consecutive all-time highs in a row. And on Thursday, right after that, we had one of the worst opens in history and the fourth lowest tick in history. It was based on the pandemic fears rising again as Japan has declared state of emergency and made all of the Olympics competition without spectators. So the whole Delta variant fears were running high, and so the market opened up with a gap down. The level we talked about at our last podcast, 42.80, pretty much was the level where the market paused. And this was the vol trigger and also my level that I was watching. And this is where the vol trigger is still again today. So as of right now, so it seems like it's still a very important level in this bull market. And as long as we're above it, uh, it's still good for the market. Well, I was saying that I was expecting this level to be tested, and I got lucky again. And so, but that level had so much buying interest that right after this terrible open today, the next day, we made all new time highs again, and all-time highs close as well as intraday, and now we have 10 out of 11 days of all-time highs, which is incredible how strong this market is. Every little dip is bought immediately. It's and we had 85 points since the lows run, and pretty much around 65 points of that was in a straight line since after hours tomorrow. And it's incredible how much buying is happening. Well, like some people on Twitter like to joke, I would never presume that, but one of the reasons behind it is Nancy Pelosi gamma squeezing Amazon calls that she or her husband allegedly, of course, owns. But it's not insider trading if you're a member of Congress, I've been told. So no accusations have been made, just an observation, of course.
Right. Well, if you look at these portfolios of senators and so on, at least what they disclose, they make a really nice return. It's sort of like there have been some websites I've seen where they make a hedge fund on the basis of what senators buy, and they would outperform most of the major hedge funds that are supposedly really getting alpha in the market. So they have a superior alpha to the hedge fund managers.
Well, we've been having this different set of rules for a while now. One rule is for us, and another one is for people in power. Whether it was COVID, who, when we were locked down, they all were having parties in restaurants and flying all over, as normal people were told to stay home, to insider trading, where there are different rules for different people. And as Elon Musk was saying, rightfully so at this point, I think that he said in his interview, I don't respect the SEC. He keeps tweeting whatever he wants. Nobody ever verifies his tweets. And so, when insider trading is not being punished or followed, I think SEC should just be abolished altogether so people understand that this is not a rule anyway.
Right. And in crypto, there's not really a insider. I mean, it could exist technically, I guess, but not for a decentralized project. It's just not going to exist in the same way as it would for a private company with a board or senior leadership, that sort of thing.
Right. So back to ES, I wouldn't be surprised if on Monday we'll retest at least some of that one-sided up move. If not, test that 4,300 level. 4,305 is another level I'm watching. I wouldn't be surprised if we retest that level again, because we've been kind of oscillating back and forth. So it's likely that we'll test.
I wouldn't be surprised to see a pullback. We shot above these a lot of these levels where there's almost nothing up here in it, like additional call walls,
Right.
as they say. And a lot of this, the last part of the day move was probably a fair amount of short covering that people don't want to be short over the weekend. There's been a lot of positioning on the short side, I think, and by speculators. And people don't want to be short on the weekend when it's rallying so hard. It could open up another 20 points very easily. But more likely, we'll pull back a little bit on Monday. It would be a pretty normal thing.
And well, Russell had a great day. It was down 4 days in a row. So today it was up, just today alone was up over 2%. And it was up a lot yesterday since the low as well. So that was an interesting reversal. And
Right.
Nasdaq was up a little under 1% and just failed to make new all-time highs today, just a little bit short. Hopefully Nancy will buy some more calls over the weekend, or maybe she'll buy some today. We'll see.
Bonds down, reversed pretty sharply.
Right. Bonds had a sharp reversal since yesterday, right? After being up so many days in a row and making new highs, finally had reversed.
Right. It's so and the dollar made a similar move. It was a pretty yeah. Let's see if I can get the dollar here. It wasn't as severe a move as bonds, but it was down almost 1/3%, which is a pretty big move in forex. So, but a lot of it wasn't. There wasn't really a clear direction in a lot of commodities. There were some commodities that rallied really nicely, and others like corn that really pulled back a bit more. So let me go to the daily chart that this is now sitting right on its 200-day moving average. So maybe right on what some people would consider a bull bear line, but yet others seem to be rallying pretty nicely, like gold, for example. And so it's is it? I mean, was today validation of the inflation trade? I don't know. I don't think so necessarily, just because bonds were reversing and everything that's sort of anti-bonds was going up. You had these US Steel up 8%, Alcoa up a good 6%. So some really big moves on the upside in some of these.
There was an interesting, maybe not so large, mild move in biotech with BIOGEN when FDA called for an investigation of this approval of this controversial drug again, allegedly that the agency, and I quote, worked uncomfortably close with BIOGEN executives to get the drug to the market. And most suspiciously, this included an off-the-books meeting, an unprecedented decision to approve it through a regulatory shortcut, because apparently not one board member has approved it, and some of them, well, a few of them have resigned, but somehow FDA approved it anyway via some regulations. So I don't know what that means, but the stock sold off a little bit.
Yeah, I tend to think it was the right thing to do. And I say that, I'm not just saying that as someone who has worked in the industry, but rather someone who I want there to be treatments for Alzheimer's, because I have people in my family who have dementia. I'd like to have treatments for them, maybe, or for people that might not be as severe as them. But I think, though, what was interesting is that a lot of some biotech did really well in the. I gotta take this off, but some biotech did really well even while we were selling off. So, and these were some of the cell and gene stocks that I like to watch, like Intellia or CRISPR. All of these were rallying good 6 or 7%, even while the market was down briefly 2% or so. and Editas is another one. And this followed through a little bit today. The rest, like Intelia, sold off for a little while. So some of these, I think, they're worth looking at. I like watching what is being bought, even as there's a sell-off happening, because sometimes it indicates a kind of rotation, or that there's buying interest that's really strong, and they can't cover it up, even in a sell-off. So so that's what I think. Yeah, some of these are interesting. Intelia had some really nice news recently on some of their sickle cell development, and they where others have failed, like Bluebird, have had some clouds hanging over their product, but this one might end up succeeding, and they have some other rare diseases products. So this really popped a few weeks ago, and it's held up pretty well, because it's the FDA, for whatever they might do on Alzheimer's, which, depending on who you talk to, it might be classified as a rare disease at some point. There's a lot of people that suffer from it, but depending on if we get to better classification, sometimes it might be a rare disease. But there are true rare diseases, like people, diseases that have maybe 20,000, 30,000 patients across the country, and some of these cell therapies that's what that treats, and those will get approved almost no matter what, if there's not a treatment already. So it's I think there's some it's hard to read. What do you think, Elena? I think it's kind of hard to read today as really being indicative of a trend change, but it is interesting to see some of these things that are rallying.
Are you referring to biotech specifically, or
just in general? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't really know about biotech that much, because it seems like more regulatory tape, and whatever FDA decides, to me, it's a completely random thing. They approve something, they don't approve others. They approved this one, and now everybody's quitting over it. To me, none of it makes any sense. So, but the stock is not reacting too badly. So that's why I would say it's a non-event mostly, as far as that.
Yeah, I think that the toxic thing about this discussion on the ADUHELM, BioGen's product, what was really toxic is what upset the people that resigned was that the FDA approved something that was expensive. And well, it's sort of the question is, well, are we not approving something that is expensive now? Or is that, are we approving it because it actually might work in a certain group of patients, and the cost issue and all that is something to be worked out? Instead, these programs are all on the precipice of not being solvent, and so they're now essentially a political decision that they're bidding.
The whole healthcare is such a mess. There was just an article in the Wall Street Journal last week saying that people who actually pay cash for their services in the hospitals who don't have insurance are charged the most. To me, this is the most ridiculous thing. I knew this all along, but somehow Wall Street Journal just discovered it, that people who actually do not have insurance, whether it's doctors or not, when I go to a doctor and I don't have insurance, they charge me more when I have. So for them, when I pay cash, it's obviously a cost savings, because they don't have to process my claim. They don't have to submit the claim. They don't have to wait for insurance months and months to get paid. I'm giving them cash in advance. It should be a discount to me over the insurance cost. But
I agree with you completely.
So,
I agree with you completely. But what happens is that, see, the government or the insurance companies and hospitals, they actually get paid more by the government than even more, because they can claim that they lost money on something, or they actually, it cost them more or something like this, and they get a fixed amount that they get paid. And they're all sort of negotiated rebates and so on. And it's but you're right. I would agree that why wouldn't someone with cash in hand
Right.
be able to get the best discount?
Any other business operates like this except for healthcare. So we live in such a perverted world as far as healthcare goes. There is just nothing makes
Oh, well, but okay, so you look at something like mobile phone service or something like that, where yes, it's regulated, but it's very much compared to pharma or medical devices, it's a free market almost, or and kind of any kind of consumer electronics or something like that, where prices go down every year. If you want to buy
exactly.
the same phone a year from now, and it gets outmoded or whatever, there's a new model that comes out. Oh, the one that last year's model, it's now $500 cheaper. And you could even buy it on
Right.
Twitter, eBay, or online somewhere, like even cheaper than what you could get in a store. And we're used to consumer electronics or computers or whatever falling in price. I bought a computer recently, and I paid less than what my parents paid when I was a teenager for an Apple IIe, which had 64K of memory and a floppy disk that held something like 140K of programs, and paid less than what they paid in US dollars, whatever that was, 30 some odd years ago. And so and the computer I have is basically a supercomputer compared to
Right.
what would have existed even 10 years ago.
It's fewer and fewer things make sense to me as the time progresses. Here's another one. There was the Washington Post article on the tweet today saying that calling food exotic reinforces xenophobia and racism. So now you can't even say the food is exotic. We're redefining words faster than I could catch up. What you can or cannot say. It's
I
So
don't know. When I came
problems
to New
like this,
York, I
right?
came to
Instead of
New York after living in Indiana for years, and I remember living in Manhattan. Living in Manhattan, I'm like, wow, there's all these awesome restaurants that I could never get in Indiana. I mean, there were some things maybe, but not the variety you have in Manhattan. And so I'm like making a list of all these cool cuisines from around the world that I want to try because, well, I'm here. Why not try them all, right? And the more exotic, the better. It's like, oh, this place serves yak. Wow, that sounds cool. And like, see what that tastes like. Goat tacos, awesome.
Exactly. All right, let's talk about crypto. So, what's happening to Binance? There are so many different rumors and controversies with Binance lately. Some countries are blocking it.
Yeah. Well, they're getting, well. See, this is the thing. They don't want to comply with these governments in terms of sharing information, and that's just not the way forward for any kind of exchange because they are they're basically a financial services company, and why wouldn't they fall under the regulation? I mean, any broker does, any stockbroker or whatever financial services broker does. So, but they just don't want to comply at all. Unlike say Coinbase, which they do what they have to meet the the regulations, the laws of the U.S. or wherever. But Binance has been very opaque about like customer information and so on. And the problem is that isn't even very popular in crypto because I think that there's a distrust of any kind of centralized service going back to 2013, 2014 timeframe with what some people call Mt. Gox, MT Gox, but it was at the time by far the biggest exchange, and it was based in Japan for trading Bitcoin. And it was originally, it started as an exchange for trading Magic the Gathering playing cards, which was where MT Gox came from. But it they started allowing Bitcoin trading, and somehow there was a hack that was very suspicious. It ended up being tied back to the leadership of that, and there's still people that lost their Bitcoin in that, are still trying to get it back. They've like got the ability to make claims and things like that, but they still haven't gotten it back from like 8 years ago. And so there's still a lot of distrust of any kind of centralized service. There's others that have blown up far more recently, like Cryptsy was one, a New Zealand-based exchange that just maybe 2-3 years ago, they had a hack and everything got stolen there, and people lost a lot of money from that particularly in altcoins. So these types of things, they've created a distrust. Binance became well known because they offered the most altcoins for trading. They weren't very well known for just trading Bitcoin or something like that, even though people do that. But so I think there's just a little bit of Binance hate in crypto by more senior people that are around, and then also, but they've also kind of defied regulators, and I think they're asking for, they're going to get pinched, because they won't have the defenders in crypto that they think they will. The main users are people that are kind of newbies, and nothing wrong with being a newbie, but they're not the people that are going to be the most sort of passionate defenders of a platform, and they could really suffer through this if they don't play their cards right from there. But I think what surprised me, I think that some of the sell-off that we had to do with some of the Binance news, where they're running into some problems, and so we had this sell-off in Bitcoin that was kind of nasty. It seemed to rally up to about the 36,000 level, which I consider to be an important level to get over, and it rallied right up to that, tapped it, and then reversed here over the last few days, and it then fell down too. But I was surprised that it didn't fall a lot more, because it went up to the 36,000 level. It would have been nice to get back over this this level, but this is where we sort of topped out, but then went down to just a bit right about 32,000 and then bounced, which is great, because if we go back to the previous sell-off, it's making a higher low now, which if it can continue to rally here, that'll be pretty good. It needs to break through this 36,000 level though. But I think that some of it had to do with the Binance news, that the sense that regulators are cracking down, but it's really more, I think it has more to do with Binance being kind of being evasive than that there's any kind of special crackdown. I think the crackdown was China. I mean, that was the one that really hit Bitcoin hard when I got up to the 41,000 level. But I think that we could we'll continue to see a bit of a rally. I think that these previous levels, 36,000 on Bitcoin, and then about 2,400, 2,450 on Ether are the places to watch. It runs some problems there, and I don't expect another big sell-off like this unless there's some bad news. But I do think it could take a little time to work through those. But we have seen some really nice rallies here in some of the DeFi tokens, like Synthetics is one that I follow really closely, and Yearn is another big one that's performed a little bit less well, but Synthetics is nearly back at its highs of a few days ago. So it hasn't really suffered through this at all. And then some others like say AAVE are also they've held up pretty well. So I think some of this may reflect some broader interest in these that they've recovered pretty well from the bear, and they may perform pretty well in the future. They've got a lot of room overhead to move. Like synthetics is still a good 65% off its high. This one, AAVE, is a good no, it's 50-60% off its high. So and these are revenue generating. They're not just whatever trading sardines. They're revenue generating. They're yield generating, and so they're kind of like dividend stocks, dividend paying stocks, and financial companies. So I think it's worth looking at. The other thing I think is interesting is Dogecoin is
Right. I was just gonna say, even Dogecoin was up today.
well, it was Elon Musk's tweet where he was comparing it favorably to Bitcoin and Ether.
Well, I saw some news site saying that he said that there is merit, in my opinion, to Doge maximizing base layer transaction rate,
Right. Here it is.
minimizing transaction costs with exchanges, acting as the de facto secondary layer. I don't know what any of this means.
Well, so what this means is the way to interpret it is that okay, so really Ethereum and then Bitcoin to some degree. Bitcoin has what's called Lightning Network, and then there's also some other so-called layer twos that are being built on top of Bitcoin to let it do DeFi, similar to Ethereum. I haven't had a chance to try those at all or see how they work, so I just don't know. I've used Lightning Network, but I haven't used any of the planned systems for Bitcoin. But Ethereum has a bunch of layer twos where it doesn't have a lot of the basically the layer two, the security burden is still handled by the layer one regular Ethereum network. And so there's like a batch transaction mode, and it is able to do transactions much faster and cheaper by having a layer two. And that's all in process right now. So it's all going to be rolled out for Ethereum over the next, say, 2 months. And so a lot of transactions will ship there, and it will make it much cheaper and faster. And then what they're saying is, what he's saying here is that, well, that Doge, the fact is there's not a lot of transactions on Doge, so it's cheap, but it's cheap because there's no transactions. There's a ton of transactions on Ethereum, and so it's sort of like everybody's trying to use it, so it gets expensive sometimes. The layer two will alleviate that by kind of letting Ethereum do layer one, do all of the hard work, and then it's just sort of processing transactions there on a layer two. But he says the exchanges are the layer two, but that's because the only thing people are doing with this is trading it, right? They're not really like using it to whatever, buy an insurance product or get a loan. You're not able to do that with Dogecoin. So it's a little bit, I don't know, I'm not sure that it's sort of a weird comment because there's really no function for this. But I think that the key is with Bitcoin, if we look at it, like the key is the hash rate for Bitcoin. That's the one thing to look at more than anything. And that's still, I bet it's switch over to Bitcoin. That's still down, but it's rebounded off its low a bit. But this is the thing that people are watching, that it's still about still about 35–40% off its low, off its high. That was back in May or April, and that's where it made its peak. And then China announced their ban on mining, and that's where we've seen this cascade down and price followed. But I think as we see some of this rebound a bit, and here it's actually, I don't know if I can get, so yeah, we're starting to see a rebound, and I think this will pick up more. It takes time to move miners and so on, and to bring up mining capacity. You have to get the right equipment and so on. But I could see this rebounding, and then Bitcoin rebounding with it. With Ethereum, it's a different story. They don't have that challenge. There wasn't a lot of mining going on in China. The big underlying indicator there is what are called contract calls. And so what this is people actually using Ethereum for transactions that aren't just trades. And what we're seeing here is that's sort of spiking back to the levels that it had back in May, which is where it made its high. And if we do something like do a moving average on this, then we're still off the moving average high, but it's rebounding pretty nicely there too. So these are just some things that I look at where it's kind of, they're like the equivalent of fundamentals for crypto, where this is people using these networks for real, moving value around or making transactions in some way. And we're starting to see a rebound, which it was hard to make the case for more than a technical bounce while something like this is still heading down.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can see, oh, okay, a bounce maybe, but is there really the kind of the tailwind behind it? This is more of where we're starting to see some of the tailwind, and that's so I'm starting to see some positive signs, but it will probably take. It's not just going to be a straight path up. I don't think that we have like what we had with Ethereum, where we had this monster rally from really this level up to 4,300 and a span of just really a few weeks. I don't think we're going to see this again this cycle, or at least not immediately.
Right.
There's too much damage that's been done, really, and it's got to recover at least some of these levels. We might see it down the line, but I expect a slower rally, grind up, and grind up's not a bad thing, by the way. I mean, like we've had a grind up in SPX and Nasdaq, and that's been probably the most powerful rally in its history. Right. I'd rather see it grind up in Bitcoin and Ethereum at this point. I think it would be a lot more bullish than the just shoot up. But I think that we'll probably over the weekend see an attempt at a rally. It was last weekend where we saw the strongest rally, and the futures popped up a good 6–7% from their Friday close when they opened on, I guess they opened on Monday, but I could see something similar happen, that I could rally over the weekend and pop up.
Thank you for the crypto update, and I guess that's all for us for today. We will see you guys on Monday.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.